Hello, and welcome to the new Dakota Boys Talk Movies. Thank you for listening. Glad you're taking time out of your day, or maybe we're just part of your day. You just fit us right in with whatever you're doing and listen to the sultry sound of our voices come into your eardrums and cause your eardrums to vibrate. All those sciencey things that happen. Knock that earwax loose for you. You're welcome. But yeah, welcome. Tonight we're going to be reviewing the new Sony-made, Kevin Reynolds directed, Joseph Fiennes starring movie Risen. So we'll be bringing that to you. So we thought, since we were going to be discussing that movie, which is, I don't know if I'd call it an epic, but it is a biblical movie. But tonight we're gonna give each other some biblical epic trivia and see if we can stump each other here. So, Dakota, do you have a few questions?
Oh, I do. You ready for me?
I am. I'm ready for you. Why don't you go ahead and throw me your first question here?
All right, coming at you. What Hollywood film is the only film to be approved by the Vatican?
The only one to be approved by the Vatican, huh?
That's right.
Oh, that's a tough one.
This is 100% Vatican approved. I could tell you one it's not.
I have some ideas of what it's not. I'm trying to think of what it would be. I'm guessing it's probably an older one.
It is.
Is it the Ten Commandments?
Close.
Like how close?
Very close. You're in the general vicinity.
Well, it can't be Ben-Hur.
It is Ben-Hur.
It is Ben-Hur?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
That is interesting that that's the one that's Vatican approved.
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just surprising that. But, I mean, I love Ben-Hur. Which, if you've listened to other episodes of this, I just talked about Ben-Hur in my Oscar episode. And I guess since we brought up Ben-Hur, I have some Ben-Hur trivia to throw at Dakota here.
Oh, man. All right.
So, as I talked about in the Oscar episode, I love the chariot race scene. That is an amazing scene.
It is.
So, in that scene, now this was before digital effects. So, how many extras were required for the chariot race in Ben-Hur?
Oh, gosh.
You want three options?
Okay.
3,000? 7,000 or 15,000?
I think I'm going to go with 7,000.
No. 15,000.
What? Oh my gosh. No way.
That's
Holy cow.
True. That's movie making at its finest right there, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just throw this out there as for those of you still kind of wrapping that in your head. That was a huge, big budget movie. Its budget in today's standards would probably seem a lot more, if you would put inflation into it. But they put a lot of money into that movie. So yeah. All right. What else you got?
All right. In the Ten Commandments, as in real life, God says, the fourth commandment is, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. On what day does the Sabbath fall on?
Ooh. See what you're doing here. Is it Saturday?
Yes. That's right, people. The Sabbath actually falls on Saturday.
Trying to trick me with that Sunday stuff.
If you didn't think about it, you probably would have said Sunday, because that's what everyone says.
I kind of actually knew that one.
Oh.
It caught me for a second just because you want to say Sunday. But all right, I'm going to trying to fit in a different movie here. So this one is from Passion of the Christ.
Okay.
A newer biblical movie. How many hours was Jim Caviezel in makeup for when he was completely beat up Jesus, scourged Jesus?
You mean how many hours of makeup did
How
he have
many
to
hours was he in makeup to get that complete scourged look?
8 hours.
What's that? Sorry.
8 hours.
Oh, no. Well, you were pretty close.
7, 6,
10.
What?
10 hours.
Good Lord.
Yeah, that's...
he looks pretty rough, but I didn't think it was wow.
10 hours rough. Yeah, but you got to remember, I mean, basically his whole torso had to be, ribs showing and things like that. So, yeah. Long time. They had to develop a new kind of blood for that movie, too, like the way they made the consistency of it. So, yeah. All right.
Ready for another one?
Ready.
All right. I think I got you here.
Okay.
This movie held the record for the most pre-ticket sales until Star Wars The Force Unleashed replaced it. What was it?
You mean Star Wars The Force Awakens?
The Force Awakens, yes. Wow. Never mind.
The most pre-ticket sales?
Yes.
Passion of the Christ.
Yes.
Every church group was buying tickets to that movie. I think Catholics required that you bought a ticket to that movie ahead of time.
Yeah, I think the Catholicly kind of came back in full force there for a brief moment.
Yeah, that's interesting though. That had the most until Force Awakens, huh?
Oh yeah.
Wow, I would have thought there would have been some sort of blockbuster in between there, but
Yep.
All right, what do I got here? Okay, so Charlton Heston, as we all know, played Judah Ben-Hur, and Ben-Hur, most people know that anyway. What major star of the time turned down Ben-Hur because he didn't want to promote Christianity? Now I'll give you 3 options. Burt Lancaster, William Holden, or Montgomery Clift.
Oh, man.
These are 3 guys who were pretty big in the 50s. Well, and beyond and stuff, but...
William Holden?
No. It was Burt Lancaster. He was an atheist.
Oh man!
And I think it was a twofold thing. I think he thought the movie had too much violence portrayed in it, and he wasn't really a fan of violence. And they didn't want to promote Christianity, so he turned it down. To Charlton Heston's gratitude, I'm sure, because that movie really helped Heston quite a bit. All right. Well, what do you think? You got any more?
No, I have one more.
All right, well, throw it at me.
Kind of relates to something.
It relates to something. Okay.
Yeah.
I like things that relate to something.
I almost gave it away. Holy cow. I need to get it together here.
All right, what do you got?
What actor who was up for Superman was eventually let go because he had played Jesus?
Oh, yeah. Jim Caviezel.
Yes. See, that's a little too...
Yeah, like Bryan Singer would have liked him, I think, but he thought they were too similar.
Yeah, he actually did a costume fitting for Superman Returns, and then after thinking it over, he had already played one messianic character. Didn't want people to go, I think it would have helped the movie, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of glad Caviezel didn't do that because I like Caviezel.
Okay.
And that movie might have hurt his career even more, because that movie didn't help Brandon Routh at all. He had to kind of recreate himself, and he still kind of is trying all these years later.
Well, that kind of more has to do with his horrible acting.
That's true. He is kind of rough. So, yeah, let me see if I got... Oh, I can give you this one, I guess. Until the release of Passion of the Christ, this isn't pre-release tickets or anything, what was the highest grossing religious movie?
I want to say the 10 Commandments.
Hey, you're right.
Oh, I finally got one.
Dakota wasn't goose-egged.
Yeah.
He got one right at the bitter end. So, so fun way for you guys to hopefully learn something if you didn't know some of that stuff is through playing trivia. We both like to try to stump each other. So, yeah. But as I stated, tonight we are going to be talking about the movie Risen. But I think, when I think about it, before we go into that, Dakota, is there anything in like the movie trailer / movie news things that's kind of been caught your fancy lately?
Kind of drawing a blank here. Nothing's really happened that's been noteworthy.
Yeah, nothing too much. There was a teaser for Pete's Dragon the other day. That could be interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens there.
Deadpool broke
quite a few R-rated records.
Yeah. Now every comic book movie coming to you will be R.
That's kind of the fear, and because it's like, okay, that.
The funny thing is that isn't the first comic book movie that's been R. It's just the most successful.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people realize that. Like, because Blades were R.
The Crow.
R. Yep. Punishers.
Yes.
Both the Punishers.
Pretty hard R's, especially that last one.
Yeah, because there was a lot of people going, yeah, it's the first time Marvel went R. And it's like, no, Punisher. Because even if you go back to the Dolph Lundgren Punisher back in, 1990 or something.
Yeah. And Spawn, which was mostly rated R for swearing.
I think that was PG-13 until they released it on video, though, wasn't it? And they did like an R cut. Yeah.
And then they were both it was both the same movie. I mean, it was kind of pointless. Because, part of it was the movie was nowhere near as dark as the actual comic was, and I think that's what turned off a lot of people.
Yeah.
Which they are, speaking of news...
there's some movie news.
They are remaking Spawn.
That's the hope, anyway. Todd McFarlane finished a script. So, whether that comes to fruition is another thing, I guess. But, maybe Deadpool will help that happen. Again, whether it's a good thing or not, I don't know. But, yeah, like I said, there's just a few other things coming out. There's a few more little things for movies that are coming out here soon, but nothing too much that we haven't seen before. So
I don't know. I think that new Cloverfield movie is going to blow it all open.
That could be an interesting movie. We'll have to see, and we're hoping to bring you a review of that when it comes out March 11th. Definitely looks interesting.
If JJ really wants to blow me away, Jaegers will show up halfway through the movie and start fighting that monster.
Yeah. Secret producer Guillermo del Toro. That would be kind of cool. Yeah. So anyway, that's just a few little things. But yeah, let's go into our review of Risen.
I served the Roman Empire. I fought wars against those who did not believe in our gods. Nothing could prepare me for the truth that has now risen. He was very special. They're fanatics. What was his name? He was called Yeshua.
The man's dead. His followers are in hiding.
He's still a threat.
Take control out there and finish things.
The tomb is sealed, guarded with your life. If this body vanishes,
we have a potential Messiah.
Where has he gone? You tell me.
You will track down the corpse of Yeshua.
What happened to the Nazarene?
He's right here. Open your heart and see.
All right.
So as we mentioned, Risen is in its own right a biblical epic, although it's not quite epic in terms of how you consider Ben-Hur Ten Commandments epic in terms of mega shots and big special effects thing. But this did tell it told what a lot of people consider an epic story, but from a more personal / background point of view, in a way, where what it is it's it basically, we hear the story of the resurrection of Jesus through a Roman soldier who is there at the crucifixion. He's tasked with making sure the two prisoners in Jesus are dead, and he's there. He sees the dead Jesus there, but then and then Pilate tasks him with making sure those guys guarding the tomb, and then he ultimately gets tasked with when Jesus' body is gone, trying to figure out where he is, and they're trying to the two guards who are there in this movie. It's not really told in the Bible this way necessarily, but that the two guards who were at the tomb were kind of more or less threatened / possibly paid off by the Sadducees to tell a story that they fell asleep and it was stolen while they were asleep or whatever, instead of the fact that they're basically keeping their mouth shut on what Joseph Fiennes, who plays a lead in this, named Clavius, he's starting to realize that there's more to the story than what these guys seem to be willing to say, and so he's trying to get this whole thing figured out. And so what this story really ends up being is a manhunt story. Is his character trying to figure out what the heck just happened over the past few days here, and trying to interview people who claim to know things, whether it's kind of through the grapevine or from personal experience. And so, yeah, that's kind of the gist of what's going on in this story. The movie opens up with him, Joseph Fiennes' character, leading his legion in kind of a battle there to kind of set him up as a character who maybe just kind of... Did you feel like this movie kind of opens similar to Gladiator, but on a smaller scale?
Yeah, I thought so too.
It's like a smaller scale Gladiator because it's like he's kind of a guy who's kind of tired of being out fighting. He just wants to kind of like be done with it, go to Rome, get like some sort of upper position in Rome, and eventually just go to a farm. I mean, it was very similar to Maximus's dreams in Gladiator. In fact, what you could describe this movie as is like like a small version Gladiator mixed with Passion of the Christ or something. I don't know what you could call it, but this movie is directed by Kevin Reynolds, which I found rather fascinating. He actually worked on the screenplay too, but if you're not familiar with him, he's a super hit and miss director.
Okay.
He directed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which was commercially a really successful movie. He directed Waterworld, which I think he eventually took his name off it, but everybody knows he still worked on it. Those were a couple of his kind of those are a couple of his movies in the 90s. And then in the 2000s, all he really did for directing was The Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce, which I really, really like. That's a really good version of that story if you're interested in that. And that'd be, kind of a swashbuckler. And then, but another interesting thing he did was a few years back, A&E, well, kind of. It was the History Channel, did the miniseries Hatfields and McCoys, which also had Kevin Costner, and he directed the 3 episodes of that miniseries.
Oh, cool.
And so he's kind of done kind of a lot of different, things, because he did a few other things in the midst of that. But I was like, man, what caused him to write and direct a movie like this? Well, part of it sounds like some years back he had the idea to make a unofficial sequel to Passion of the Christ. Was his idea. And then the idea just kind of slowly evolved into this movie we have here. Dakota, let's just go over to you. In terms of let's just give kind of overall look and feel of the movie. Did you feel that worked? Just overall look and feel?
Yeah. Something, it's kind of surprising when you're watching this, that this is this was kind of a bigger studio that made this movie, because it kind of has a feeling of something you'd see on A&E.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's really scaled down.
Yeah, it's kind of like a high budget History Channel movie.
Yeah.
Is that what kind of made?
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
And that's what it is. That's the two places you could put it. It's a high budget History Channel movie / lower budget Sony release is what it is. It was made by Sony / Columbia TriStar. Have their stamp on it.
The movie I think is interesting in that we kind of get a different view of things. The movie picks up shortly after Jesus has been crucified. Right when we see him is about the time he gets his side pierced with the spear.
Right.
And it was kind of weird to start a movie off that way, because we're so used to seeing it from the other side, where that's like the end of the movie pretty much is when he dies.
Yeah. This different viewpoint was interesting in that, yeah, you're kind of jump in like that, but also they make Joseph Fiennes' character is very kind of jaded in certain ways and kind of heartless, because he doesn't get the big deal. He didn't even know this. He just knew this guy was a Nazarene. He didn't even know what his name was for a while. And when he's there making sure that the guys on the cross are dead, he hears, who ends up having to be Mary, the mother of Jesus, and a few others like crying. And he's like, can you shut those women up? I mean, he's just like, you kind of get this fact where he's just like, I think part of it was he didn't like the fact that they were just kind of making a big scene, and he's just trying to get this job done. And yeah, it's just kind of interesting to kind of come into it like that, where it's being looked at as like a job instead of focusing on the significance of what Jesus was doing up there. But then there is a moment when he realizes that, because Jesus didn't have his legs broken like they usually do, because he saw Jesus was already dead. And there's a moment where he just kind of looks up at him as Jesus hanging there, and there's kind of this moment he just kind of has where it ends up being significant later, because it gives him kind of that facial recognition of what that guy looked like up there. And so he kind of had that moment where he kind of locked faces with the dead Christ up there, which, like I said, becomes significant, obviously, later on in the movie. But yeah, otherwise it's like, it's weird to see it from the angle where he was just kind of the guy coming in to make sure everything was going smoothly, whereas they showed another Roman soldier who was kind of more there the whole time, who was kind of like reeling over the fact that they actually crucified this guy who wasn't outright criminal, and it's kind of bothering him, and he just kind of told, well, suck it up, and yeah, it was just kind of interesting. And so yeah, this movie, you're seeing it from an angle that causes a lot of conversations and characters, obviously, that aren't in the biblical account of it, but all the stuff that is from the Bible, for the most part, they had to take some liberty, and they didn't have to, but they did take some liberties on a few things. But basically what it comes down to is, after the body disappears, it becomes a hunt to find the disciples they knew had worked with him, and had been with him through his time alive. And so they're basically trying to hunt this down. And part of it was that there was the worry that if they let this go on and they're like, we need to have a body, because if we don't have a body, these guys are just going to keep touting he resurrected, and they're going to gain steam with this movement. So we got to have a corpse so we can say, no, here's his corpse, shut up. That's basically what they wanted to happen. And so that's kind of what becomes the importance of, we got to find a body.
Yeah, in the movie, shortly after the body disappears, you kind of get wind that the idea that he rose from the grave is already catching fire. They catch this one random guy bringing up the fact that he is risen, to which they arrest him and interrogate him later on.
Right.
But one thing that kind of caught my attention here is they bring up just how horrible getting crucified would be. They bring up how usually for most people who get crucified, they'd be left for days. Mostly because they just stick you on that cross and left you there to slowly suffocate to death.
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of people don't realize is you're not dead because you have nails poked through you. You die because you can't breathe, because you're hanging. And there's only so long you can kind of push up with your feet a little bit to get a breath before you're going to be too weak and you just suffocate and die. Besides the fact that liquid is probably filling your lungs.
Yeah.
And it's horrible, And yeah, they really do kind of give you that. And this was, this really, really happened. They really, killed people like this, including Jesus, and yikes.
All Spartacus's people, unfortunately.
Yep, but as a real practice, that was very, very brutal.
And I think it's even more horrifying when you consider that the act of mercy they showed you was by breaking your legs, so you could suffocate even faster rather than taking days.
Yeah. And that was another interesting thing in this movie, was how they showed after you were dead, and they showed him just flop the crosses down, just wham to the ground, pull the nails out, and just kind of roll you back into a pile of other dead, decomposing bodies. And it was just like, this is what they did to criminals. So there was no they're not going to give any extra pomp and whatever to it. And of course, Jesus, the cross, he was taken off the cross, but he wasn't just kicked into the grave because of Joseph of Arimathea coming and getting the okay to take his body to, the tomb. And so, but yeah, it was just kind of interesting to see the whole practice of that kind of played out, how it was just really brutal, really a brutal thing.
Yeah, that's one thing this movie has going for it. Every year around Easter, we get all these. We get a new take on the Gospels. This one definitely has something going for it because it's something we haven't seen before. It's after the fact, like what happened after he was put in the tomb, after he died, and I thought that was kind of made this movie for me.
Yeah, and I think it also was a reminder, because I think a lot of people forget that when Jesus did rise from the dead, he was around for 40 days. He didn't just it wasn't like he rose and went to heaven or whatever, that there was this time he's around and showed himself to people. And so this movie, I think, kind of brought attention to the fact that, he hung around and people saw him. Although, hopefully if this spoils anything for you, sorry. I was kind of disappointed in that fact, just because in the Gospels you do get the idea, and basically says that many different people saw him over the course of that 40 days. He was there, witnesses to the fact that he was alive again. Whereas in this movie, I feel like it was more contained to where his disciples were the ones who were mostly around him when he was risen. And then, of course, Clavius.
Yeah.
And so, sorry if that spoiled. I gave a disclaimer, I guess. But
you've been warned.
I just found that, I guess I just say that because it made it seem, well, and I feel like they were just trying to keep it more like the news to the rest of the world hangs so much in the balance of those few disciples, whereas there was hundreds of people who would have known and been able to declare that more without necessarily just word of mouth, but of seeing him. But anyway, but yeah, Joseph Fine also early on in the movie gets a new kind of second in command guy to go with him, who we realize is kind of more of a political favor, but it's played by Tom Felton, which you don't know who that is. He's Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, he looked really out of place in this movie.
Well, I think we're just used to him as Draco, and so it was like, what? What was weird about it is how he didn't have a snarl on his face the whole time. I was going, Potter. But yeah, so they're a familiar face in this movie. If you know who Cliff Curtis is, he's kind of a face that pops up a lot in shows and movies. He actually played a Jesus in this. They call him Yeshua. That was just in their language his name, but Jesus. And some people know who Peter Firth is. He played Pontius Pilate. But for the most part, other than Joseph Fiennes and Ophila's lead, it was a lot of kind of people we don't know, and I think it was because they hired a lot of, I noticed during the credits, people from more European cast. Like there was people from, they said casting in Spain, like they cast in Spain and Malta and places like that where they filmed. Probably because if you cast people who actually live where you're filming, you can do it a lot cheaper than flying everybody from LA, on set, too. So that was probably part of it. When you just cast those other people outside your main cast. So, yeah. Any other things that stuck out to you in this movie, Dakota, that we haven't talked about yet? How did you? I guess we haven't really touched necessarily on acting. How did you feel the acting was in this movie for the most part?
I thought it was okay. There were a couple actors that kind of seemed, I'm not really sure what they were doing.
Yeah.
They kind of were, but for the most part, everyone was fairly on their game, I thought.
Yeah. There was no standout performance in this. I thought everyone was just kind of fine. They did fine with the acting. It wasn't really standout. And there was nothing terribly in this movie that was distracting. Like there wasn't anyone with like a, Mark Wahlberg Boston accent or something trying to play a Jewish man or something. There was nothing distracting like that or, a weird out of place accent. There's obviously always going to be that. When you have, it's pretty common in Hollywood movies where you have the Romans always seem to have British accents. And, there's always going to be a little bit of liberty with that, but nothing like that really distracted you out of that character in terms of how they played it out. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like the acting was fine. There was just nothing of the highest caliber, but your lead in this is Joseph Fiennes, and he's, he always is like in stuff where he's fine or whatever, and that's his last name.
Yeah. He does all right.
He's either all right, and sometimes the movie around him is kind of bad with what he's in, but I thought he did pretty good in this, comparatively to how he can be in some movies, especially when he's the lead. So I thought he worked in that respect. Yeah. So I guess in terms of that, and like I said, I thought the look of this movie, obviously having it not filmed on set or in America just kind of helped take you into the story a little bit more, and everything kind of had a look that kind of put you in there. So I thought all that was good. So I think I don't know, anything else you have about this movie, Dakota?
I was kind of surprised that this film had like a gritty kind of feel to it. Usually whenever we see these movies that take place in the past, the Roman uniforms the armor's usually like really, really shiny. And
kind of like they just took it off the rack or something.
And their red tunics are just bright red, like they've just been freshly made.
Yeah.
But in this, it's like, I don't think anybody looks that way, really.
No, they all kind of look worn in and things like that. So, yeah, just kind of another thing that...
And then there's some pretty cool shots of, like, mountains, deserts, ravines, that all just look pretty cool.
Yeah, it wasn't... Yeah, when they're going through things, like, nothing was clean. You had to get through this rocky spot, or you had to duck under the tree to get into here. Yeah, like, nothing was just, like... it wasn't like everything's purposely flat, so that's easier to film. It's like they kind of put you into the landscape of everything. So yeah, that was kind of cool. But I guess let's just go into maybe final thoughts / rating. Maybe we'll rate it on a 5-star scale.
Oh, okay.
Do a 5-star.
5 today. All right.
So yeah. So I guess final thoughts / your rating, Dakota.
I'm gonna go 2.5.
2.5 stars out of 5.
3.
No, it's fine. I was just making sure I heard you right.
I know.
I don't care if you change.
I'm feeling indecisive today. I'm giving it a 3.
Okay, so he gives it a 3 out of 5 from Dakota. My final thoughts are you'll like this movie if you go in just knowing what it's going to be. Just kind of an interesting kind of a biblical epic. Well, I should say kind of not epic, but I think it can be a really entertaining movie if you go in just kind of knowing what you're going to see. And I guess with that being said, on the star scale, the 5-star scale, I'd give it a 3 out of 5 also. Just because it was flawed in certain ways. In certain ways, the flawness didn't hurt it. In some ways, it did. Yeah, just like... mostly, just knocking it down for things I thought that were left a little unsaid that maybe made it slightly hard to follow in spots. But yeah, so, well, I guess we kind of agreed on that one. We both give it a 3 out of 5. But again, like I said, that doesn't mean it's a don't take our 3 out of 5 as like, this movie's terrible. Like, we're just saying, like, it was just kind of a interesting movie, and like I said, I think if you go into it with the right mindset, knowing, okay, let's just kind of watch how this movie unfolds, let's see this story that everybody kind of knows from this angle, I don't think you'll necessarily find anything wrong with it in terms of just like being maybe mad you watched it. You might, so you might just go like, that was interesting.
You know, I didn't bring it up at the time, but we were easily the youngest people in the room.
Ho! No joke. So at the showing we were at, it was like when he walked in, he's right. There was literally, everybody had white / gray hair. And maybe you go, well, duh, it's because you went to like, that movie or whatever. But at the same time, like when I was watching it, it wasn't like I was going, man, this is a total old people movie, and so, but what was funny was at the end of the movie, everybody was really quiet and kept sitting there. That's what was really funny, because like when you go with like a younger people audience or a movie, especially with kids, everybody just gets up and takes off right away because the little kids have like pea-sized bladders, PEA-sized bladders. Their pea-sized bladders are full of pee, or whatever reason you just get out of there or whatever. But these old people just kind of sat there and kept staring. It was really funny.
I don't know. Maybe they thought they were watching a Marvel film.
Yeah, like there's something after the credits. Jesus comes back.
He comes back again?
Oh, shoot. But yeah, that is a funny thing to point out. Yeah, that we were definitely we brought the average age down.
That's right.
A few years, possibly a decade or more. So yeah, with that, I think we'll just kind of wrap up this episode that maybe wasn't a biblical scale episode, but hopefully you had fun listening and hearing about a movie that maybe you didn't really think too much about because it got overshadowed by other things or whatever. But yeah, there's that. But also make sure you check us out on Facebook, like us on there. We have updates, we put new stuff. Pretty much any of the news we talk about on our show at times, we try to throw on our Facebook page, when we can or do. Try to put most of it. So take advantage of that. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please do that. That means a lot to us. It means you're there and you care. So we hope you're subscribing. And then on top of that, if you listen on YouTube, go ahead and throw us a thumbs up. If you feel so moved to do so. or on iTunes, go to that ratings and reviews section on our podcast and give us a star rating, because that would mean a lot too. But yeah, feedback, we're always looking for it. Also, use our Facebook page or the comment section on YouTube to maybe give us some ideas of what you'd like us to do on the show, whether it be stuff to talk about, movies to review, whatever. You can go ahead and do that. So, yeah, I think with that, we'll close out this show. So, yeah, this is Steven.
And this is Dakota.
See you later.